There is a screen you check more than you check the faces of the people you love. You know the one. It lights up in your hand 100 times a day. You read the texts, you read the threads, you read the small gray number sitting on a red circle that tells you something is waiting, and you tap it, because waiting things make you anxious, and tapping makes the anxiety go quiet for a moment. But there is one screen you do not check. You let your thumb drift right past the bank app like it is a door you do not want to open. You tell yourself you will look later, after the weekend, after the next deposit, after you feel a little stronger. And while you are not looking, the money keeps moving anyway. Let me show you the inside of one ordinary morning. A subscription renews at 6 in the morning while you sleep, the one you meant to cancel in March. At lunch, you order delivery, and the total lands $4 higher than the menu said because of a fee you did not read and a tip you set on autopilot. In the afternoon, a buy now, pay later installment quietly clears, one of 4, and you genuinely could not tell me right now whether this is the second or the third. And the transfer you keep meaning to make, the one that moves a little money toward your future instead of your past, is still sitting where it has been sitting for weeks, labeled in your mind as tomorrow. None of those are disasters. That is the entire point. Not one of them is the kind of mistake you would feel ashamed of in front of a friend. But together, unseen, they are doing something. They are making decisions. Your money is making choices in the dark, and you are finding out about those choices a month later, when the statement arrives and the number is already a story that has already ended. So I want to be very clear about what this is. Before we go any further, this is not a lecture about discipline. I am not going to tell you to track every penny or feel guilty about coffee or download an app that buzzes at you. The problem is not that you spend money. The problem is not even that you avoid the screen. The problem is the thing the avoidance allows. The problem is drift. Drift is what happens when small amounts of money move while no one is watching, and the movement compounds before anyone names it. It is the gap between the decision you think you made and the decisions that got made for you. And the reason drift is so dangerous is not that it is fast. It is slow. It is patient. It hides inside ordinary life so well that by the time you can see it, it has already become a balance, a late fee, a thinner cushion, a missed window. Here is the cruelest part of how most of us handle money. We have decided that the responsible thing to do is the monthly review. Once a month, we sit down, usually on a Sunday, usually a little dreading it, and we look at everything at once. We open the statement, we feel the small, cold drop in the stomach, and we promise to do better. And we mean it. But the monthly review is an autopsy. By the time you are reading it, everything in it is already finished. The subscription already renewed. The fee already cleared. The transfer already failed to happen 30 separate times, one quiet day at a time. You cannot catch drift once a month because drift does not work on a monthly schedule. It works hourly. It works in the small charges that blur together the moment they are more than a day old. Think about how quickly the texture of a purchase disappears from your memory. You can probably remember what you bought this morning. You can mostly remember yesterday. But 3 days ago? The specific charges from 3 days ago are already smoothed in your mind, sanded down into a vague sense that you spent some money. That smoothing is exactly the window drift lives in. It is a distance between when money moves and when you would notice it moved. Close that distance and drift has almost nowhere to hide. That is what we are going to build today. Not a budget, not a spreadsheet you will abandon by Thursday. A dashboard. A small, calm, recurrent surface you can look at in about 5 minutes, often enough that nothing important gets old before you see it. A dashboard is not a budget jail, and it is not a trading screen. A budget tries to control the future by rationing it in advance, and most people quietly rebel against their own rules. A trading screen tries to predict the future and rewards you with adrenaline for staring at it. The dashboard does neither. The dashboard just answers one question. Is my money drifting, idling, leaking, compounding,
or waiting on a decision I never actually made. It is a control surface, not a courtroom. You are not there to judge yourself. You are there to see. There are 6 things on it. I want to walk you through them in the order you would actually feel them, because the order is psychologically real, not alphabetical. The first is cash today, not your net worth, not your investments. Not some abstract number that makes you feel rich or poor. The actual, spendable, available cash sitting in the account that real life pulls from this week. This is the number you have been avoiding, and I want to take the threat out of it. You are not looking at it to be scared. You are looking at it because it is the floor you are standing on, and a person standing on a floor they cannot see flinches at everything. When you know the real number, even if it is smaller than you wish, your whole nervous system gets quieter because uncertainty is heavier than bad news. The dread of the screen is almost always worse than the screen. The second is the last 24 hours of charges, just the last day. This is the single most powerful square on the dashboard, and it is the one almost nobody uses because the monthly review trained us to look at everything or nothing. But the last 24 hours is where memory is still warm. You can look at yesterday's charges and actually recognize them. Yes, that was groceries. Yes, that was gas. Wait, what is that one? That little wait is the entire game. That is you catching a charge while it is still young enough to question. The fee you would have shrugged at in a monthly statement, you will challenge in a daily glance, because today you still remember that the menu said a different price. The third is recurring charges, the leaks. These are the ones that renew on their own. The subscriptions, the memberships, the services that were free for a trial and are not free anymore, the one you are paying for twice because you forgot you already had it. You do not need to find all of these every day. You find them once when one of them surfaces in your last 24-hour square and makes you say, I thought I canceled that. A leak is not a moral failing. It is just money flowing through a channel you stopped using. The dashboard is how you notice the channel is still open while the water is still running, instead of a year later. The fourth is debt drag. This is the quiet weight. The credit card balance, the buy now, pay later installments stacked across 4 different apps, the interest that grows even on the days you do not spend. I call it drag because that is what it does. It pulls against every other thing you are trying to do, in the background, without asking. You do not need to panic about it on the dashboard. You just need to see it as a single, honest number, so it stops being a fog and becomes a fact you can plan against. The fifth is upcoming bills, the near-term obligations. What is coming in the next stretch of days? Rent or the mortgage, the utility that is due, the insurance payment, the installment that will clear, whether or not you remembered it. This square is what protects you from the worst kind of drift, which is the drift of timing. So much financial pain is not about having too little money in total. It is about having the right money in the wrong moment, spending on Tuesday what was silently owed on Friday. Seeing the next obligations before they land turns surprises into plans. And the sixth is one transfer or one default action. Just one. Not a financial overhaul. One small move that routes money somewhere better than where drift would have taken it. We are going to come back to this one because it is where the dashboard stops being about watching and starts being about steering. That is the whole thing. Cash today, the last day's charges. The recurring leaks, the debt drag, the upcoming bills. One move, 5 minutes most days. Not because you are obsessed with money, but because 5 minutes of daylight is enough to stop a month of decisions being made in the dark. I need to be careful here because there is a version of this that becomes poison, and I have watched it happen to thoughtful good people. The dashboard can curdle into a shame ritual. You start looking every day, but you look the way you would inspect a wound to confirm it still hurts. Every glance becomes a small punishment. Look what you did. Look how little is there. Look at that charge, you weakling. If that is what looking feels like, you will stop looking, and you should, because that version does not help you. It just trains you to associate your own money with disgust, and people do not walk toward things that disgust them. So here's the rule that keeps the dashboard kind. Every time you look, you tie what you see to exactly one next action. Not 5, not a sweeping plan to fix your entire life. 1. You see a leak, you cancel the one subscription right then in the same minute you noticed it. You see a charge that is wrong, you flag it once. You see cash sitting safely above your obligations, you make the one transfer. You see a bill coming, you make sure the money to cover it is where it needs to be. The dashboard is not a verdict. It is a menu of one. That is what turns visibility from anxiety into relief, because the human nervous system does not actually fear bad numbers. It fears bad numbers it cannot act on. Give the seeing an exit, and the seeing stops hurting. This is the difference between someone who checks their money and feels worse, and someone who checks their money and feels lighter. It is not the size of their balance. It is whether looking comes attached to a move. Now, I want to turn this because there is a second failure that is the exact opposite of avoidance, and it is just as expensive. There are people who would never dream of avoiding the screen. They look constantly. They know every number. They research everything. And they still lose, slowly, because all that looking never turns into movement. Picture two people who decide on the same day that they are going to start building something with the money the dashboard keeps showing them is just sitting there. The first one researches. They want to do it perfectly. They read about whether this is a good moment, whether things are overpriced, whether a better entry point is coming, whether they should wait for clarity. They are waiting for the fog to lift before they take a single step. The second person does something almost boring by comparison. They pick a simple, broad, diversified default. Nothing clever, nothing they have to babysit. They automate a small transfer into it, and they let participation do the work while they go live their life. A year later, 3 years later, the second person is ahead, and not because they were smarter. They were almost certainly not paying closer attention. They won because they removed the decision from their own willpower and handed it to a system that keeps going on the days they feel nothing. The first person is still researching. The fog they were waiting to lift never lifts, because the fog is not a real weather pattern. It is the permanent condition of not knowing the future, and it will be there next year too. This is the routing step, and it is the second thing the dashboard buys you. Once you can see that there is cash sitting above your obligations, money that is genuinely safe to move. The most useful thing you can do is not to predict where it should go. Prediction feels productive. It feels like diligence. But for most ordinary money, the boring default beats the brilliant timing, because the boring default actually happens automatically on every single day, including all the days you are tired or scared or distracted. You do not need to be right about the market. You need to be present in it, on autopilot, through the long stretch where it feels like nothing is working. The reward does not go to the person who guessed the best moment. It goes to the person whose system kept participating through the boredom. So the sixth square on your dashboard, the one move, is very often exactly this. Not a heroic decision. A small, repeated, automatic transfer that turns money you can see into money that is doing something, before drift turns it back into money that evaporated. But here is where I want to slow you down, because there is a trap inside the routing step too. Not all idle cash is the same. Some of your cash should be still. Your emergency money, the cushion that lets you absorb a broken car or a sudden bill or a gap between jobs without reaching for a credit card, that money is supposed to sit there. Its entire job is to do nothing until the day it does everything. Stillness is its function. Do not let anyone, including me, shame you out of holding it. But there is another kind of still money, and it pretends to be the first kind. This is the cash that is sitting still not because you decided it should, but because you are afraid to move it. I'm waiting for a better moment. I'm waiting to feel ready. I'm waiting until I have researched enough to be certain. And the dashboard has to help you tell these two apart because they look identical in the account. One is a foundation. The other is drift wearing the costume of caution. And the quiet cost of the second kind is real. Even when the screen lies and tells you nothing is happening, the number does not go down, so you feel safe. But the world around the number keeps getting more expensive, and money that simply sits year after year while the price of everything rises is slowly losing what it can actually buy. The dollar amount stays the same. The purchasing power leaks. That is drift too. It is just drift you cannot see on the balance because it happens to what the money is worth rather than to what the money is. So when your dashboard shows cash, ask the honest question. Is this money still because it is on duty or still because I am afraid? Protect the first. Route the second. Now, before this starts sounding like a single clean rule that fits everyone, I want to take the rule back down a notch because clean rules are seductive and they are often wrong for the specific human holding them. Constantly, a mathematically elegant piece of advice. Wait longer and the payout is bigger. Delay and the number grows. And in the pure arithmetic, it is true. Waiting can genuinely produce a larger result. But a larger result on paper is not the same as a better life for you because the math does not know your situation. It does not know whether you have the runway to wait. It does not know your health, your household, who depends on you, what is due next month, or whether the years the strategy assumes you will get are years you will actually have. The elegant answer can be completely correct in general and quietly wrong for the person in front of it because they needed the money sooner or carried a risk the formula never accounted for. This is the deepest reason a dashboard beats a slogan. A slogan is a rule with the context stripped out. Always wait. Always invest. Never hold cash. Always delay. The dashboard keeps the context in the room. It shows you your actual runway, your actual obligations, your actual timing, so that when you meet a piece of advice, you can hold it up against your real situation instead of swallowing it whole. The best move is never the one that is best in the abstract. It is the one that is best given everything you can see, and the dashboard is how you keep everything in view. So let me tell you what all of this is really for, because it is not the numbers. Imagine for a moment the fantasy at the far end of money. The one where you have so much that spending could not dent it, where rooms rearrange around you, where there are no lines and no waiting, and no logistical resistance to anything you want. Strip away the objects and notice what is actually being described. It is not the things. It is the absence of friction. It is time that is not eaten by waiting. It is the ability to decide what a day is for, instead of spending the day reacting to small fires. You are not going to buy that with a 5-minute dashboard, and you do not need to. But you can buy a small, real version of the same thing. Fewer emergencies because you saw the bill before it landed. Fewer forced choices because you are not surprised. Fewer panicked reaches for a credit card at the worst possible moment because the cushion was visible and intact. That is the actual product here. Not wealth as a trophy. Wealth as fewer moments where money makes the decision, and you just absorb the consequence. The dashboard is how an ordinary person buys back a little of that friction-free, self-directed life, 5 minutes at a time. So here is how I want you to use this, starting today, in a way that is small enough to actually survive contact with your real week. Most days, not perfectly, not religiously, just most days, you open the one screen you have been avoiding, and you spend about 5 minutes. You look at your cash today, so you know the floor you are standing on. You scan the last 24 hours of charges while they are still warm enough to recognize, and you let yourself say, wait, what is that about anything that earns it? You make exactly one move if a move is sitting there waiting. Cancel the leak, flag the wrong charge, send the one transfer, cover the bill that is coming. 1. Then you close it and go live your life. That is the whole daily habit. 5 minutes to see, one move to route. Then less often, once a week or once a month, whatever you will actually keep, you step back and look at the slower squares.
The recurring leaks, all of them this time. The debt drag as one honest number you can plan against. The upcoming obligations across a longer horizon.
And the bigger question of whether your still cash is on duty or just afraid. That is the wider review. And notice, it is no longer an autopsy because the daily glance already caught everything while it was alive.
That is the rhythm. 5 minutes to see, one move to route, and a longer calm look now and then to keep the context in view. It is not discipline. It is not obsession. It is just refusing to let your money keep making decisions in a room you never walk into. So tonight, when your thumb drifts past the bank app the way it always does, pause.
Open the door. Look at the floor you are standing on. It is almost never as bad as the dread. And even when it is, knowing is lighter than wondering.
Make money visible before it makes the choice for you. 5 minutes, in daylight, is how the drift stops.